Yeah, by his logic, every time there's a mass shooting, we should bomb the city the shooter was from. Yeah, I mean, it makes it a lot... well, Capri Sun Poppy, let me tell you something about white supremacist attitudes in America and draw a parallel to something that we did in 1985, where exactly what you just said happened in the United States of America in fucking Philadelphia near Drexel.
מה קורה? ברוך השם, מה שלומכם?
לצערי אתם צריכים ללכת מפה.
למה? יש פה צפת מחר?
כן.
טוב, אז אנחנו רק שנייה לעשות פה כמה דברים, אנחנו יוצאים, אנחנו לא מתקדמים.
אנחנו צריכים לצאת עכשיו.
So the Israeli military are now telling us to move because this is, they say, a closed militarized zone. We're not allowed to be here, so we're going to go and move and do the interview somewhere else. So there's Israeli soldiers here who are telling you have to move, and they've previously also pulled down this building. Why is that?
The Israeli nation doesn't understand our reasoning for being here in this country. In the end, the sole reason morally for being here is a promise that was given to us by God.
Did you have permission to build this house when you did it? Right now, there are millions of Palestinians who live in the West Bank. What do you think should happen to them?
Also, because Israel views any money into Gaza benefits Hamas, they have blocked any aid groups getting in, even on the ground. That the irony is, they do not want money to get into Gaza through like many charities. There's still some, like the Palestinian Children's Relief Fund and medical aid. But the irony is that Netanyahu has specifically directed funds into Hamas himself, like foreign aid directly to Hamas, in an effort to prop up Hamas so that they can use Hamas as like the singular force for Palestinian people and further justify a brutal campaign against Palestinian people. This is also 1,000,000,000% well documented. Time and time again, he has openly said that this is his purpose. His purpose is to thwart any attempts at a Palestinian nation state being designed, and the best possible way to do that is by propping up Hamas as the major player in the region. You're not Jewish and we're talking, it's all great. But if someone doesn't recognize us and keeps using terror and violence towards Jews, his head needs to be chopped off right away with no hesitation. No compromises. Doesn't matter if it's a million or a billion people.
Palestinian raids by Israel have become more frequent and more ferocious.
This is from 4 months ago.
61-year-old Abdel Hadi al-Ashgar was one of the 123 Palestinians killed by Israeli forces this year. He was treated in hospital by his own son Elias before he died.
One other thing that I have to explain to a lot of you, by the way, is that one way that they also do journalism in many of these instances is like if a settler kills someone, they will try to lop that under the IDF as well. Fuck, I forget what the verbiage is, but they use like a specific language to make it seem like it's actually like Israel security or whatever. Sorry, I was responding to a text message.
Israel says it's targeting militants, but at least 23 of those killed in the West Bank, Jerusalem and Gaza were women and children. And in February, 30 Palestinian homes were burnt down after hundreds of settlers attacked several Palestinian villages.
I have to pee.
Armed Palestinian fighters in the West Bank have also targeted Israelis. This year, 19 were killed, including 3 British Israelis who moved from the UK to a settlement 8 years ago. One of them was 15 years old. The increase in violence hasn't disrupted the new government's programme. It's pushing ahead with the reforms to Israel's judicial system, which would make it easier to implement extreme policies, including the annexation of the West Bank. The proposed changes have triggered the biggest anti-government protests since the creation of Israel.
Every week, hundreds of thousands of Israelis gather in Tel Aviv
Aviv to protest against the far-right coalition's plans to overhaul the judicial system. But what's really striking is that there are hundreds of Israeli flags everywhere. There are LGBTQ flags, but I can't see any Palestinian flags here. Despite 5 million Palestinians living under Israeli military occupation, few here believe it's relevant to the debate around democracy. Barak Heyman isn't one of them. We met the film director as he was battling police officers who'd confiscated his Palestinian flags in contravention of the law here. He says he attends the protests with a small group of Israelis who ensure that the Palestinian issue isn't ignored.
I swear to God, it's difficult for me right now.
It's difficult for you right now?
Yeah.
Why?
Because, look, I feel like I'm in those fascist, nationalistic flags march of Israel.
And you've had
I
your
feel
Palestinian
embarrassed.
flag taken away.
I always walk here with my Palestinian flag, and this is what disconnects me from all this Zionist orgasm. And,
Zionist orgasm?
Yes.
So settlers are exclusively a West Bank thing, or is not isolated just to the West Bank? Sorry if this is a dumb question. The origination of the Israeli state is, of course, due to settlements, but it is no longer 1948. It's no longer 1967. These are people that have been living there for 75 plus years. So when I talk about settlers, I am referencing settler terrorism in the West Bank. There are still areas since 1948 that were always designated for Palestinians as Palestinian land, as designated by international law. That wasn't what I was responding to. I was responding to this. Every Israeli in Israel is a settler, not just the West Bank. They started settling in 1948. Okay, listen, it doesn't matter. That is entirely unproductive. The goal should be not to rid every single fucking Jewish person and kill them and push them out of Israel, which is, one, immoral, and two, not ever going to happen, and three, is exactly what Netanyahu claims what Palestinians want. Okay? There is no, it's just like you're leaning into that for no fucking reason. It's ridiculous. The goal for a singular nation state in Israel is for peaceful coexistence. Anyway.
It's very rare to see this sort of commentary. What do you think the people holding the Israeli flags will say if I go to them and ask them what do you think of occupation?
The reason why there are not many people here with my opinions is because the Zionist system is very efficient.
Yeah.
And they taught us from very, very early age that this is the place for the Jewish people.
One of the biggest supporters of Israeli settlement expansion has been former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, who only a few months ago handed over power to Benjamin Netanyahu. Before politics, Bennett headed an Israeli settler organization called the Yisha Council. He's advocated for the illegal annexation of 60% of the West Bank. What do you think the role of the military occupation of Palestinians and the death of Palestinians, what role do you think that has played in terms of Israeli society and politics?
We make it our business to thwart terror as early as possible in the process. So if we can meet the terrorist in his home in, let's say, Jenin, rather than meet him while he's shooting us in Tel Aviv, all the better. That's our process. And during that sort of friction, yes, Palestinian militants and terrorists die, and that's part of it. But we don't go out ever with a goal to kill civilians.
You say it's defensive, but this year, 18 Palestinian...
This is insane, okay? It's just fucking, no, that's crazy. That is a lie, dude. Get the fuck out of here. actually insane.
Children have also been killed. And the father of Ilyas that we spoke to was not indoors. He was outside. He'd just been in a mosque. He wasn't around any militants, and he was shot and killed. We also spoke to the father of a boy who had been killed in Jenin. He was outside. We saw the video of him. He was also unarmed, and he was killed. Shireen Abu Akleh is another person who clearly was labeled as press. There are clearly situations that happen over and over again.
I want to emphasize, if we don't see Palestinians coming in and killing Israelis, we won't walk around there.
They're basically calling all Palestinians terrorists. Yeah.
We're not in the business, and no one has a desire.
That's not ESL. He's struggling to frame it the right way. Yeah, exactly. No, I don't think that's like a, I mean, if you think that's ESL, you should hear the way he speaks about Palestinians in Hebrew. You know what I mean? Let me tell you something.
Desire to roam around Jenin or Nablus or Ramallah. That's not what we're looking for. But when folks from those cities come into Israel and kill Israelis, so yes, we.
Yeah, he's saying that actually in the West Bank they are also terrorists. Like, so if there are terrorists in the West Bank as well, and all of Gaza is definitely terrorist, then everyone is a fucking terrorist. Yeah, by his logic, every time there's a mass shooting, we should bomb the city the shooter was from. Yeah, I mean, it makes it a lot well, Capri Sun Poppy, let me tell you something about white supremacist attitudes in America and draw a parallel to something that we did in 1985, where exactly what you just said happened in the United States of America in fucking Philadelphia near Drexel. The move bombing. That was when the Philadelphia Police Department dropped C4 out of a helicopter and wiped out an entire city block where the Africa family lived. And their slated purpose for it was exactly this. They killed an entire fucking family. Move is a crazy cult. Yeah, no, then the way to deal with that is by dropping C4 on the entire city block, and the police chief at the time saying, let it burn.
Do go and try and thwart terror at its sources.
Do you believe in the Palestinians' right to have their own state?
The Palestinians have their own state.
Like, you know how the Irish say we have a dual struggle? Americans look to Israel and say we have a dual struggle in the opposite direction. You know what I mean?
In Gaza, and have half of a state in the West Bank, in Judea, in the PA. So as I said, they already have 1.5 states.
We're talking about.
I don't believe in another one.
We're talking about no Israeli military occupation. We're talking about Israeli soldiers withdrawing from the West Bank. We're talking about them controlling their own borders. We're talking about them making decisions for themselves, having their own army, having their own system. Do you believe in a Palestinian?
Thank you, Shint Kami Simp.
And all you said.
But do you believe in a Palestinian state?
So I'll answer. You said having their own army. No. Controlling the borders so they can bring in millions of Palestinians that will flood us. No. Having their own education system, their own tax system, their own government, their own parliament, their own democracy, yes, but nothing that can infringe on our security.
So do you believe that Palestinians should be allowed their own state equal to how Israel has its own state?
It's less than a state. I said that because a state would mean they have their own military. It's what I would call an autonomy. And yes, we need to strengthen that, but I am opposed. After having one Palestinian state in Gaza, another one or half of one in the Palestinian Authority, both are terror states? No, I oppose a third one.
I need to mention something here. He is the reasonable voice. He was slated to be the more moderate. He is the moderate voice against the Likud party.
Barak Heyman finally found another Palestinian flag. But many Israeli liberals here agree with Naftali Bennett that their democracy doesn't depend on the Palestinian right to freedom.
אתה עושה נזק, תוריד את הדגל, בבקשה.
אתה מוכן להוריד את הדגל?
לא, זה דגל שלי.
וזה דגל שאני מזדהה איתו, והוא מייצג את המאבק הפלסטיני לעצמאות.
אבל זה לא מאבק פלסטיני פה. אתה מחפש פרובוקציות ואתה עושה נזק, זה מה שאתה עושה.
I've been to the West Bank, I've been to Jerusalem, I've spoken to many Palestinians about these demonstrations. All of them, nearly all of them that I spoke to seem indifferent about what's happening. And they say this is Jewish people protesting for Jewish democracy. It's got nothing to do with us.
I am very sad to say that I totally agree with them. And instead of being home and bitching about it, I prefer to come here with my Palestinian flag because I believe that maybe it is helping to change just a tiny, 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 tiny bit the wind towards the left.
Is it real to assume that an Israeli leader he'd be assassinated going against his own government, though? What? You think that's fake? What do you think happened last time? And Rabin was the Israeli leader that actually did try to negotiate with Palestinians, and he was assassinated. And those who called for his assassination are now in power. To give you a good framework of what has happened in Israel and how the attitudes have shifted.